He's back. Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Craig Wilkins. I'm from the Conservation Council of South Australia. I'm your host for tonight. This forum is jointly shared between the Conservation Council of South Australia, the state's peak environment body, and we're hosting this in partnership with the No Radioactive Waste on Agricultural Land in Kimba or SA group. I begin tonight by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which each of us across Zoom land gather tonight. In my case, that's the land of the Kaurna people, and I say Mai Napudni, Nankina Mayun Namani, which means welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are all well. I would like to particularly acknowledge the Barngarla people, whose lands are the focus for our discussion tonight. And I pay my respects to elders of yesterday, today and tomorrow, and I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us tonight or watching a recording afterwards. Tonight's event is focused on a national radioactive waste facility proposed for Napindi near Kimba in prime agricultural land on Eyre Peninsula. So it's smack bang in the middle of the electorate of Grey. Hence, our focus tonight is on the views of Grey candidates. However, this issue extends far beyond just one electorate. It's a critical issue for the state of South Australia, and in particular, those communities who may have radioactive waste travelling through their towns. And this is very much a national issue. This is intended to be the resting place for Australia's national radioactive waste. A critical component of that waste, intermediate level, needs to be kept safe for humans for 10,000 years. To put that into context, the end of the Stone Age was around 6,000 years ago. 10,000 years is around twice as long as the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. So we have to get this right. And critical choices will be made in this next term of government. Potentially someone on the screen from Grey will help shape those choices. Now, I should declare and be upfront that my organisation does not support the current proposal put forward by the Morrison government. We have been frustrated by the process. We are distressed that the strong and consistent opposition of the Barngarla people has been ignored. And ultimately, we think it is poor public policy. Because one of the great misunderstandings about this whole proposal is that it is only a temporary for up to 100 years proposal. So for us, it feels like the worst of both worlds. Best practice internationally is for intermediate level waste to be buried deep underground. But because this is planned to be only a temporary facility, deep burial is not planned for Kimba. Instead, the waste will travel from Lucas Heights in Sydney over to Kimba, where it will be placed above ground until the authorities work out where the final resting place will be. This for us seems like a crazy process. However, we have invited candidates here in good faith, because one of the great things about our democracy is that there are a range of views and we have the space and the time to share those views and choose the best choice that represents our feelings and views about a particular issue. So we strongly welcome the participation of all candidates, even if those views are counter to our own. The candidates who have chosen to participate tonight include Richard Carmody as an independent, Suzanne Waters from the United Australia Party, Liz Habermann, who's an independent, and Tim White from the Greens. We also have other statements which we can read out during the night. The format for tonight is that we are going to ask each of the candidates to deliver a short statement, maximum of around 3 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. And I really encourage people online to jump onto the Q&A function and ask any questions throughout the evening. And our team will actually monitor that and then pass them through to me, and I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. Then after the Q&A session, we've got a statement from the Barngarla people, and then the closing remarks from Peter Wolford from the No Radioactive Waste in Kimba group. Just a quick message to the candidates. I'll jump in if you are taking up too much space, so to allow everyone to have a fair go. And the joy of Zoom is there are mute buttons, so be afraid if you talk too much. So let's kick off. I think the running order I'll start with. I might jump to Richard first, and then to Suzanne. Then I'll read a statement from Peter Miller from the Liberal Democrats. But first, your opening statement, Richard. Over to you.
All right. I have run before, and so my position is already on the public record on this. I'm actually neutral on the dump. So I have no strong position either way. I'm willing to still be swayed by people on it. I have worked with radiation myself in my job as a metallurgist. I have a reasonable background in education in the effects of radiation. I don't see Kimba as being harmed by the dump as it sits. I don't think, like a lot of the suspicions of the people of the town, will come to fruition about the negative aspects of the dump. But also on the flip side, if the town wasn't to receive the dump, and if it was totally up to me, I would probably choose somewhere more arid to put the dump rather than an agricultural area like Kimba. But if the town wasn't to receive the dump, I don't see it as an issue either, especially because in my campaign, I have a job guarantee. And half the reason why the people in the town wanted the dump is for jobs. So I sort of say, well, you don't actually need this dump if you want the jobs. You could just sign up to a job guarantee. We could implement that system across the country and you would solve your jobs issue that way. So that's kind of where I sit.
Right. Appreciate those words. Thank you, Richard. Over to you, Suzanne. What's the view of the United Australia Party?
Okay, so the United Australia Party, our main concern is food security for Australia. So to actually take valuable farmland and turn it into a waste dump. So back a few years ago, we were looking at mining on agricultural land right near where I live at Warramboo. And I was part of the inaugural group who stood up and said, no mines on farmland. We need to preserve agricultural land for food production. So I was part of the Lock the Gate group to stop that going ahead there. And I believe the same in Kimba. It's fine. If we need a waste dump, not on farmland and not on productive agricultural land. We have less than 5% productive agricultural land in Australia. So if we're going to put it somewhere, why not back near Olympic Dam where it comes from? But do proper geographical surveys and EPA statements rather than just make a judgment call and say this looks like a good spot, but not on agricultural land. We need to keep our food security to feed our people and feed the rest of the world that we supply. So that's our stand.
Fantastic. Thanks, Suzanne. Next, I'll just deliver a statement on behalf of Peter Miller from the Liberal Democrats. In response to our invitation, he said, "Thank you for the invitation to your event. However, I must inform you that the Liberal Democrats would not be very supportive of your cause. Therefore, would be little point in my partaking of your event. We take the stance of being pro-nuclear energy. Large portions of Europe are fine with it, and are also of the belief that SA would benefit greatly by providing such storage facilities to the rest of the world via the overseas revenue that could be generated. SA is spoilt with areas of geographic remoteness, and this is our comparative advantage relative to the rest of the globe. What is being proposed is purpose-built, state-of-the-art storage facilities, not just dumping truckloads of radioactive waste on farming land. I won't try to change your mind on this issue, as clearly you have your own position. However, I must be honest and say that I will not support your position." That's from Peter Miller from the Liberal Democrats. Next, I'll pass it over to Tim from the Greens.
Thanks, Craig. Craig, I just might add too, as the chair, I believe that our lead Senate candidate is a participant tonight. So she has been very active in the campaign against the dump. So I'm hoping at some stage that Barbara Pocock will be able to make a comment too. But I'll kick it off for the Greens. And my first point is that the First Nations people of this region have said no to the dump. It's their traditional country. They were not consulted on the matter, and so they, I understand, held their own discussions within within their group, and not one, I understand, has supported it. So right from the outset, you could knock the idea on the head simply based on the fact that the traditional custodians have said they don't want it. That's enough for the Greens, but we'll continue because there's more to say against it. I understand from my research that the Rand government has stated that and this I understand is legislated that they will not. It's not acceptable for radioactive waste to be imported into South Australia, and that that the state parliament must conduct a public parliamentary inquiry into the matter before it could even be considered. So that idea, that's the second thing that knocks it on the head. It can't proceed on that basis. The third point is, from my research, is that the CEO of the nuclear regulator in Australia has said that the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation has stated that the dump is not required because they can store all of the nuclear waste on their site, quote, for decades to come, unquote. So for that reason, that knocks the idea on the head too. So and I'll continue. So there's been no study, I understand, into the safe transportation of the waste from where it will come in Australia. It will travel considerable distance, either by land or by sea. There's been no research into the safety of the transportation of the waste to the Eyre Peninsula. So that's another reason for knocking the idea on the head. The research hasn't been done. The next point is that, and you raised this in your introduction, is that our understanding in the Greens is that the dump is not fully costed. It's not fully designed. It's a temporary solution, and the more secure solution is yet to hit the design stage. So it's only a temporary solution, and so we can't proceed based on that poorly developed planning. So that's another reason for knocking the idea on the head. The other reason is that the research that we've done is that it is based on arable farmland. South Australia has only 4.5% of its land which is arable. Why place it on arable land? It's nonsensical. So that is another idea, another reason for knocking this idea on the head. So the Greens believe that it cannot proceed based on all of those reasons. There needs to be a much greater study into the feasibility of it, should it ever be considered as a possibility that South Australia could proceed with any sort of nuclear waste dump.
Great, thanks, Tim. And I'll now pass it over to Liz Habermann.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me here too. I've been on council, and I've been sold the business version of this for quite a few years, and it was always, it's all about the jobs, and it's low level waste, and it's going to be great for the community, and it's going to be fantastic. Anyway, in the last 6 months, I've been talking to, been getting views on everything from every position, and I've now, we've got to not let this happen at all. It can't go on agricultural land. The process was so flawed. It didn't involve the people that it actually will effect, no matter how safe it supposedly is. And yeah, I'll be doing what I can to stop this from happening. There's certainly other places much more suitable if they, through the proper research and proper processes, if they find that they need to find a place. But yeah, leave it where it is. And this is serious stuff. Like, we've got a duty of care for not just the next 100 years, but we've got a role to play in this. So yeah, I'm opposed to it, no matter how safe it supposedly is. I just don't think, we're trying to sell grey and the EP is a green, clean, renewables area. And like I said, no matter how safe it supposedly is, we've to have a nuclear waste facility in the middle of it, it's not good. So that's where I stand, and I will be especially keen to work with everyone involved to go through the processes to make this stop. So that's me.
Great, thanks, Liz. So we also, as I said, reached out to Rowan Ramsey from the Liberal Party and Julie Watson from Labor. Both declined through having prior engagements. I think it's fair to say that Rowan Ramsey has been a consistently strong and enthusiastic supporter of the project. In terms of Labor, they haven't provided a statement for tonight, but they have previously expressed clear concerns about the importance of Aboriginal consent. And for those of you who are familiar with the journey around the legislation in the federal parliament, Labor did hold it up for about 12 months, insisting that the Barngarla people had a right to a day in court to fight it. And that was certainly appreciated by the Barngarla people. And certainly SA Labor's view is crystal clear. They say that the Barngarla people should have a right of veto over this proposal. And they say we clearly have an obligation to manage our domestic nuclear waste in a responsible way for the long term. However, SA Labor believes the site selection process has been deeply flawed from the beginning, resulting in fractures within the local community over the proposal. SA Labor's preference is for the current proposal to be abandoned and a thoughtful and considered process for the long-term management of Australia's nuclear material be initiated. And just following on from the mention before around the SA government's position and the fact that there is actually an SA law which actually makes this facility illegal, and so any federal intervention will actually override South Australian law, which, considering there is such a consistent and strong view from SA Labor and the SA Labor government, will make for very interesting constitutional times. Thank you everyone for your opening statements. Really appreciate those contributions. We're now going to have some time for some questions, and I'll be really encouraging anyone who would like to ask any questions to put them up on the Q&A function. You'll see at the bottom of the screen, and I'll try and get to as many as I can. Also, I'll try and keep a track of the chat as well, in case people are putting it into there. But the first question is actually from Barbara Pocock, who is the lead Senate candidate for the Greens, and that Tim mentioned. She asks, interested to hear whether candidates support a say for all South Australians about the disposal of nuclear waste at Kimba or anywhere in SA, not just a smaller group. If so, how would they see this occurring? So that question around who has a say in this and how it is occurring. So I might perhaps start with Suzanne. Do you have any thoughts around this question? I think you're on mute there.
Can you just rephrase that, because my computer's cutting out? I didn't quite get all of that, sorry. I think you're on mute. I can't hear you.
I am, sorry, juggling between the screens. Let me just read that out again. Barbara writes, interested to hear whether candidate support has say for all South Australians about the disposal of nuclear waste at Kimba or anywhere in SA, not just a small local group. If so, how would they see this occurring?
Okay, so I believe, can you hear me? Yeah, I believe everyone in South Australia has to have a say on that, because it's not just going to be positioned in one spot. It's got to travel and be transported via various roads, rail, however it's going to get there. So it's going to pass through various other communities. So we actually need to have a statewide referendum to ask people how this is going to affect them and whether or not they approve it, rather than just a designated group that are directly impacted approve that. So as we've said in the past, we live on the main air highway. It's going to travel on the air highway to get to Kimba. So everyone should have been consulted along the entire transportation network to get it there. Everyone with the surrounding land should have been consulted, not just one little group of people who said it's okay to just pop it here.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. Liz, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Same, Suzanne, like a statewide referendum, but also, I mean, it's got to come through New South Wales too. So, like, yeah, we've got to. The process was so flawed. Even if it was, even if they'd done it as like a 50-kilometre radius from the actual site, not just Kimba council district. So, you know, we've got people that are close by, as Suzanne said, people that are close by who didn't get a say because they're in the wrong district council area, and yet people on the other side of Kimba, 100 kilometres away, get to have a say. So I just think it needs to be a statewide choice with the actual facts, but they seem to be changing as well. So, like, what, you know, they've got to be transparent for starters, and then at least we know what we're dealing with. So it started as you know, it's going to be buried. Now there's going to be a big shed. So, like, what's, you know, staff, there was going to be heaps of staff. Now there's what, 14 or something? I mean, who knows? Yeah, so transparency and a statewide referendum.
Great. Thanks, Liz. Richard, what are your thoughts?
It's a difficult one, because if you expand it to the whole of South Australia, then they say no, then you've kind of subverted the small group that were very enthusiastic about getting their new facility. So how do you do that fairly? And I might as well start, because I feel like I'm going to end up a bit like the defence attorney for this dump, but there's already yellow cake transported through South Australia like monthly. There has been for the past 20 years from the uranium mines, and so far there's been no accidents. So, and that's a lot more radiation in those yellow cake drums than what there'll be in the low level waste, at least, being transported around the state and even through New South Wales or wherever. And even for the case of the intermediate level, sorry, or medium, whatever you want to call it, if you, like, I've never seen one of those trucks carrying a house that has an escort ever crashed on the road in South Australia. So transport is pretty safe. So yeah, I am very cautious about expanding it outside, changing it from the current process.
Great. Thanks, Richard. And Tim, what's your view? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, Craig, I'm off mute now. It becomes very much a legal issue if the federal government could override the state government. And as I mentioned earlier, the state government has stated that it must conduct a parliamentary inquiry into the radioactive dump and waste dump. So that would include the transportation of the material and every other aspect of the dump. So if they were able to override state legislation, then and there was still opposition in South Australia, I can only imagine it would then go to the courts and it would be discussed there, because I can't see what powers the state would have left to try and put a stop to this project.
Thanks, Tim. So I might stick to the theme of around the process, and there's a question online around about the fact that Don writes, my wife and I were in Kimba mid-2021. We asked some locals about what the community thought about the dump. We were told within the township that people had been taken to Lucas Heights and had been briefed by scientists and executives about its safety and its value to Kimba. They came back and proselytized in favour of it, and the great majority of the community have voted in favour. Can the candidates comment on this process and outcome? So really keen to get a sense from candidates about how they feel about how the federal government rolled out this proposal in Kimba. Was it a fair and appropriate process, or did they have any concerns? I might start with Liz this time.
Did every person in the Kimba district go? Like, were the Barngarla people involved? Like, excuse me. Yeah, as I said earlier, a flawed process. So it's quite easy to find a group to take somewhere who sort of follow, well, you know, you want a particular answer. It's quite easy to find those people. So yeah, I think, you know, it's serious stuff. We've got to really seriously look at the process involved for starters, and go from there. So I just, yeah, so flawed, and too many unanswered questions still. So yeah, we need to scrap it and start again. And
yep, no worries. Tim, your thoughts.
Thanks, Craig. I'll go back to the very first point I made, which highlighted the first opposition that the Greens have to the proposed nuclear waste dump, and that is that a lack of consultation with the First Nations people, and they have a direct interest in this, whether they want to have this project proceed on their country. I noticed, Craig, that you've got, I saw Michelle Madigan's name come up on as a participant. Now, Michelle has been actively involved in working with the First Nations people over there, and if there is not a First Nations spokesperson here or to speak to this matter tonight, I believe that you should ask Michelle to have the time to make comment on this matter.
Thanks, Tim. Keen to focus on the candidates tonight, but if we have time, I'll definitely jump to Michelle. Thank you. Richard, your thoughts on this one?
I've got a couple of things to say. So could Peter confirm, did that actually happen? Did people actually go across from Kimba to Lucas Heights? Was that actually a real thing that happened?
Yeah, so passing over to Peter Wilford.
Yeah, most definitely. I think I was probably the only one that didn't go.
How many was there?
How many? I couldn't tell you, but there would have been probably 200 to 300 people went over. So they spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on people, and they were all looked after in the best hotels and didn't cost them a thing. So yeah, it certainly happened.
Oops, sorry, I muted myself. The other thing I was going to ask is the Barngarla people, have they been successful? They've got their court case coming up where they may be able to stop the process. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in on that one. Thanks, Richard. We've actually reversed the focus process of tonight. So you're asking the questions, I'm answering, or trying to answer anyway. So there is a live court case underway. The Barngarla people have taken it to the federal court under judicial review, and I understand June 15 is the next hearing date. So that's a process which will take some time. And it's still being worked through, but the decision is yet to be handed down.
Last thing I'll say then on it, just because I can't really comment too much on the process, having not seen it or anything like that, or the outcome. There's not much I know about the outcome other than the vote the town had. It might have been interesting if some of the biggest skeptics had gone to the Lucas Heights, and potentially if you took some of the most supportive people of the dump and took them somewhere where you guys might take them to show them some of the negative effects of radiation and radioactivity and that sort of stuff, and show both groups, both sides.
No, thank you. I might pass over to Suzanne, but I do notice that in the chat, Jason from BDAC, the Barngarla Determination Aboriginal Corporation, is actually online, which is fantastic. So we may be able to jump to him at some stage during the night and get a response from him directly around some of these questions, which is fantastic. Welcome, Jason. So Suzanne, just quickly to you on that question around process.
Okay, I'm a bit like Richard. Who chose these people? When it said a few people went across, I'm actually flabbergasted that 200 to 300 people went across. Like, what was the process in selecting these people? Who selected the people? Was it an advert in the paper? How did they actually select these people to go over and come back with this report?
I'm not sure, Peter, have you got any thoughts?
Look, yes, anyone could go. I mean, I think the last report I saw, I thought it was about $900,000 was spent on people that went over. So it didn't matter who you were. If you wanted to go over, you could, if you lived within the Kimba district. And there was people from, all sides that went over, and keeping in mind that what's over at Anstow is not going to be here at Kimba. I think that's an important point. And I just want to, if I can, Craig, just mention to the candidates, and certainly to Richard, he mentioned the word fairly before, and they have to remember that Kimba was removed from this process back in July of 2016 because of the division it had caused in this community and the lack of broad community support. And then it was brought back in by a new minister in December of 2016. So I think he needs to understand that not everyone in Kimba wants this dump here, and fairness is what we're after. So I think it works both ways. I think he needs to remember that.
All right, thanks, Peter. Just looking around, there's actually a direct question from Megan through to Suzanne. I wonder I might propose that, which is, it says, in 2019, Clive Palmer described South Australia as a backwater that needs nuclear power. South Australia has consistently voted against any nuclear in our state. Why should voters believe that your party would put community interests ahead of the nuclear industry's interests? Question for you, Suzanne.
Okay, so firstly, I'm not inclined to agree with whatever the mainstream media have come out and said about Clive Palmer. So there's so many stories floating around out there. He didn't pay his workers in the nickel mine. There's affidavits before the courts that he did, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll dismiss that bit there, was that he said it was a backwater. Now, the fact whether or not we use nuclear power is something that's completely different to whether or not we have a nuclear dump, a waste dump on farmland. So that's completely different. So to say that it says there, why should voters believe that your party would put community interest ahead of the nuclear industry interests? So that's two completely different things. So if any party looks at proposing the use of nuclear power, that's something completely different to whether or not you have a dump on wasteland. And like I've always said, no dump on wasteland, no wasteland on agricultural land, because agricultural land is very important for food production.
Thanks, Suzanne. So I'm wondering, it's a big part of this conversation is, if not Kimba, then where else, or what other process should there be? So our organisation has a very clear view that there actually is an alternative path, which is there is actually an ability to keep the waste stored at Lucas Heights and securely store it there while the long-term future of that waste is decided, and a location is decided on where to do the ultimate deep burial, but essentially not shift it temporarily. And we think there should be a genuine, open, transparent process involving the Australian community about that final destination and the long-term management of that waste. I'm really keen to get a sense of what the candidates think is the alternative beyond what has been proposed by the current or the Morrison government. So yeah, I would like to ask each of you, if not the waste dump in Kimba, what other process or solution would you propose for Australia's nuclear waste? Might start with Tim this time.
Thanks, Craig. I'll go back to one point that I raised when I first spoke at the beginning of this forum, and that is that the Australian Nuclear Science and Technology Organisation have stated that and they can manage the waste on site at Lucas Heights for decades to come. So that gives the opportunity then for the broader debate to occur as to where and if we require another waste dump anywhere in Australia. And there's certainly no rush for that discussion to occur, because we've got a site that is secure for quite a while, and it's not Kimba, it's Lucas Heights, I understand.
Thanks, Tim. Suzanne, do you have thoughts around this one?
Sorry, just had to unmute. Like he just said, if Lucas Heights can take the waste for many years to come, why aren't we just looking at that facility? Why are we looking at somewhere new, somewhere else?
Yep. Thanks, Suzanne. Richard, what's your view?
Lucas Heights, I think you guys are focusing on a bit too much. That's where the intermediate waste is stored and will come from. But there's plenty of low-level waste gathering in hospitals, at the mines in South Australia, and I thought that was going to be the majority of what was going to go into the waste facility. So are we just going to leave that at those spots? Is that an ideal thing to have the waste at the mines, or would you want to put it in a purpose-built facility? So yeah, I think those things need to be considered.
Thanks, Richard. I might pass on to Liz first, and then I'll come back and perhaps respond to that, or ask someone else to respond to that. Liz, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with the other guys. Like, keep it where it is. We've actually got time on our side for change, and there's experts out there. We've got to listen to the scientists, the people that do this, and we've got to listen to the experts. So time and talking to them and working out a proper process. But just want to quickly say to Richard, like, I was sold my son went through cancer, so that's what got sold to me. Like, it was what Reese's, like the gowns and stuff that the nurses used, and so they did the whole tug at the heartstrings kind of story. And so, and I was sold on that for a bit, because I thought, oh well, we need a place for this stuff. But then I got a bit wiser and a little bit more educated. And I haven't done a massive amount of research, but from what I have, it's like that sort of, the gowns and that sort of stuff is managed actually quite well. So while people have said that's in hospital basements and stuff, it, from what I understand, breaks down quite well anyway. So it's not a massive amount of waste that we're talking about with that. So when they started talking about intermediate level waste, it's like, okay, the story's changed. So we've got to really seriously listen to this and get the experts' advice, listen to the scientists.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, I can perhaps jump in quickly and just clarify, because once again, there's a lot of misunderstanding about what's going on. There's actually two separate facilities being proposed for Napindi. One is for the low-level waste, and one is for the intermediate level waste. And they each have a whole lot of different considerations in terms of risk, in terms of approval process, and they're actually running in parallel. And the reason why we tend to focus a lot on the intermediate level waste is because that is the area that does place the risk much higher, and that waste will be transported through from Lucas Heights, and it is a significant amount of waste. In addition, there is a range of other repositories currently around the country for low-level waste. Most of it, though, is actually at the Defence Department's Woomera site in northern SA. That story we hear constantly around, it's just gloves and gowns and that waste linked to nuclear medicine. It feels to us like it is a bit of a spin line, because most of that kind of waste tends to degrade in terms of its risk quite quickly, and is therefore handled locally within hospitals and quite appropriately. There is some residual historic waste still in numerous sites, but it's very small scale, very, very tiny in scale. And most facilities around Australia can cope quite happily with it. The main game, as far as we're concerned, is the intermediate level waste, because that's the stuff that is most at risk. I'm wondering if perhaps I could pass it on to Dave Sweeney, who is from the Australian Conservation Foundation, who may have some thoughts around this one. Dave, are you able to say a couple of words?
Hello, everyone, and thanks very much, Craig, for that opportunity. Yeah, look, the question about nuclear medicine is a vexed one. All of us want to see Australians have access to diagnostic and therapeutic nuclear medicines if necessary. And Liz, thanks for sharing your story, because I think that's really important. It is a very powerful and emotional argument, but the reality of this situation is that nuclear medicine is not dependent on radioactive waste dump at Kimba or, in fact, anywhere else at this point in time. There's a very clear fact. Australia's nuclear medicine, as Craig said, with very few exceptions, is managed on a daily basis and has been for decades on a process called delay and decay, where it is kept because of short half-lives, and it degrades to a point where it is able to be disposed of in a general waste stream. So it goes from use in a hospital or a clinic or a university to storage at the same site to then disposal within a period of a matter of days, or at the most a matter of a couple of years, to a landfill. And that is how it happens, and that is how it's proposed to continue to happen. So I think it's really important to note that two things. One is that that none of the hospitals or medical centres or using radioactive material would use the Kimba facility to dispose of their radioactive waste. It's disposed of domestically, like at that site. And the second is that Australians can continue to have secure and continuing access to high quality nuclear medicines without Kimba facility or a comparable facility to any other site. So it is a very powerful argument, but it's a spurious one, it's a false one. I'll just put into the link into the chat now a comment from two medical professionals. One's a radiologist at the Melbourne's Epworth Hospital, and they make a pretty compelling case that it's not required. The other thing I'd just say in relation to Richard's point is at no point is there any intention for either mineral sands or uranium or any radioactive minerals or ores or waste products from mining projects anywhere in Australia, including South Australia, to be treated at the Kimba facility. Mine waste stays at mine sites. It's classified differently. Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Appreciate that more information. I hope that's useful for everyone. So just looking around in terms of questions and comments, it's fantastic, the level of conversation from people in the audience. Really appreciate everything that's coming forward. I'm just trying to keep an eye on it and see if I've captured most of the questions. I'm wondering, it's because it is such an important part of the story, is the voice of the Barngarla people, and with Jason as chair of BDAC on, it's a good opportunity perhaps to hear from him. So I'm wondering if David has Jason got speaking rights?
Yep, as soon as Jason unmutes, he will be able to speak.
All right, Jason, I'll pass it over to you.
How you going, everyone? Yes, with the nuclear waste dump, it's been flawed from the start. The whole process from the start, being excluded from the vote and having a separate ballot. And but as Barngarla, we we do not want the nuclear waste on Kimba, which is a flawed process. And in the end, the minister come back with and announced his declaration when he picked the site and said he doesn't know if there is for or against the nuclear waste dump. So that argument of the flawed process of voting was thrown out at the end, and we are going through the process of going through the federal court to question the whole process of what the government's gone through for the nuclear waste dump being excluded in the 21st century for the nuclear waste dump, let alone excluding putting a 20k radius around Kimba when it's not just a Kimba issue, it's a state issue, it's an Australian issue. It's getting it transported from all the way from Sydney right across. What consultation have they done with other community groups, traditional owners from Sydney right across to Kimba in South Australia? And so we stand together with the farmers to stop this nuclear waste dump, and hopefully the change of government, we can go through this process and find somewhere permanently for it to be stored, not another temporary band-aid solution to store nuclear waste within South Australia on agricultural land.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Jason. And so I might actually now ask a question of all candidates, which is, do you support a veto right for the Barngarla people on this proposal? Liz, I might start with you with this one.
For me, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Liz. Suzanne, your thoughts?
Okay. They should be considered. Like, this is an entire community. Yes, the Barngarla people, they should be considered. They have a right to veto, but also the farmers that are in close contact of where this is happening and everyone else that's going to be affected. So you need to take everyone into consideration as well.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne. Richard, what's your thoughts around a veto right?
I think they should get a chance.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Richard. And Tim.
Yeah, the Greens are very clear that the Barngarla people should have a right of veto.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right. So just looking through the questions to see, make sure we've covered.
Can I still just comment one more?
Yeah, please, Jason.
Yep. And not forgetting, I might not have mentioned it, it's not just Barngala's right. We stand together with the farmers, and the farmers stand together with us as one, as a community, as in the 21st century. And also, as the judge said, you know, that the federal government, they should have kept the gate open, but they closed the gate and didn't include us in the start. But we stand together with the farmers, and we always will. We're all part of the community. We're all part of our peninsula. We do not want this nuclear waste dump in our country. Look at the effects of the atomic bomb. And we're still suffering from that, and they can tell us a story, but we don't know the true facts of what it actually does.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jason. I'm wondering, we've got time, David, to run the video as well, do you think? Yeah. All right. I might get you to upload it's got a short video which has been prepared to talk further about the importance of respecting traditional owners. So, yeah, I might ask you to play that now.
Can you hear the video?
No.
There's one. Let me share it again. Hang on.
Might be struggling with so many people online.
Yeah, it should be okay. Just try that. Like that.
We actually want to have a voice on our own country, like we've been promised. It's taken us 20 years to fight for our country already. We've won a court case, but now we're fighting again. And it's very depressing to my family that they've got to go through all of this over and over and over. I just can't stand how they're treating us.
I was born in Kimba. Myself as a Barngarla person, I am appalled that in the 52-year anniversary of the referendum, we have been told that we can't vote with the Kimba community. We had to have our own separate ballot, and that disgusts me. It also makes me feel disrespected as a Barngarla person, but also as a South Australian and an Australian person. It feels like we are being treated as flora and fauna again, you know? Where's our right? Where's the rights of our people to stand up and say, we don't want that there. We've been pushed into something that we don't want on our country. You know, it's sad that we were given back our land only to be told that we don't have a voice. We can't say anything because the government has decided that they want to put a waste dump there. It concerns me that, you know, that waste dump is going to be right smack bang in the middle of farming land. That's wrong. They say that it's safe, but is it really? And if it spills into the ground, we have waterways under that ground that will be infected by that nuclear waste. That's wrong in my eyes. That's wrong in my people's eyes. And I stand with the farmers 100% in saying that there should be no waste dump in Kimba.
We stand with the farmers in the Kimba area. We stand wholeheartedly behind them in their push to say no to nuclear waste on what is their farming country and which is our traditional lands. So we say no to nuclear waste on Barngarla country, anybody's country.
We are Barngarla people and we stand by the farmers. We say no to the nuclear waste dump. It's taken 21 years for us to win our native title, and it's very disrespectful to our elders past and present. And where they actually want to build it, it's all a part of a big dreaming story. We are native title holders of that area, so we should have got to vote in the nuclear waste dump for Kimba. We have a separate vote towards Kimba vote. How do we guarantee that our votes are both put together?
It's just ridiculous how they are treating us. We've got our kids and our grandkids and great-grandkids that got to fight for their own country, to be on their own country, to have a say. And the government is still trying so hard to take that away from all of us. The ethical side of things is that we don't want it, that, you know, it's history repeating itself every time. When we're fighting for our country and speaking for our country, then all of a sudden they just turn around and disrespect us again.
We the Barngarla people, we say no to nuclear waste.
Great. Thanks, David, for sharing that. So we're coming to the end of our time. We hope this has helped in terms of informing people, but also informing the voters of Grey about where their candidates stand. We really appreciate the time that everyone has spent coming together, in particular the candidates. I know it's been a very, very hectic time in terms of a busy campaign, and to devote an evening to talk to us, we really, really appreciate. I'd also like to really give a big shout out to the No Radioactive Waste crew from Kimba, Peter's group. They've done an extraordinary job in terms of, for a number of years now, raising questions, standing up for their community. It's really, really hard to keep that momentum up, especially in a small community where you're sometimes at odds with your friends, your neighbours, and those you meet down the street. They've been incredibly active, very real, very effective in Canberra, across the Eyre Peninsula. There's some ads running at the moment across newspapers across the Eyre Peninsula. They've done an extraordinary job, I think. And Equally, a big shout out to the Barngarla Determination Aboriginal Corporation. Jason, it's wonderful you could join us tonight. The clarity of what you have said in terms of the view of the Barngarla people has been so consistent, so clear, so strong, and we hope that events like this help stand with you as you fight this proposal in the federal court. With that, I'm going to hand over to Peter just to say a couple of words in closing as the co-host for tonight. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Craig. I mean, I just would like to say, firstly, you know, this process has taken 6 years. So for me to sit in and listen tonight, it's been hard because it's all done a little snapshot, whereas it's been going for 6 years. It's had a significant impact on people and their well-being in this community. And I think that's one thing that politicians have forgotten all about. You know, we've stood up for what we believe in. We've stood up for our community, people that are opposed, and we've stood up for fairness. That's why we keep driving this, keep pushing this, because the logic behind what they're trying to do is not there. There is no reason. You cannot even get an answer from Keith Pitt. We sat in an office with him about this issue of why they're bringing intermediate level waste here. To be quite frank, we're sick of hearing about gloves and gowns because it's just been a smokescreen. So, look, all I can ask the candidates today is that, you know, this is a serious issue. It's a national issue. And yet this government has controlled it. Only 824 eligible people are allowed to have a say. 452 said yes. That's it. That's the game right there. So it has to be opened up for people to have their say, because everyone should have the right to have a say whether they're for or against it. So to Liz, Tim, Richard and Susan, I want to thank you for participating tonight. I know you're busy people. I wish you well on the 21st. You know, the face of Australia is changing. There's no question of that. And I can only say to you, if you are elected and fortunate enough to get into politics, we ask you to stand up for us, because the current government certainly hasn't. And we don't want to be known as the nuclear waste dump town. We're a farming community. Without agriculture, we got nothing. We finished. And this proposal is only $20 million for 100 years, whereas grain alone is $60 million on average a year. So that's why you can see we're very upset about what they're trying to do here, because it's only a pittance. And once we lose it, any potential risk, we're in trouble. So once again, thanks to you people for participating tonight, and thank you to Craig.
No worries. Thanks for those words, Peter. So with that, I'm bringing tonight's conversation to an end. Thank you for your participation and your presence. For all the candidates, go well. Enjoy the last week of the campaign. We wish you all the very best. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.